Welcome back to Wicked Gingerbread. I'm Molly if you're new here. This is part 2 of cooking with squash. As promised, I'm going to show you a really good recipe for lasagna squash, butternut squash, and a cake, a frosted cake. So the first thing you'll need to do is get 2 butternut squash. If you're making this both recipes today, might even be easier. One of these we're going to peel. Just use a regular vegetable peeler. And then we're going to cut it into dices and roast it. This is going into the lasagna. The second one is going to be cake. We don't need to peel this one or anything. We're just going to roast this off for about an hour. I might cut it in half so that it kind of gets done a little quicker. The thicker it is, the longer it takes. So I'll probably, maybe 45 minutes. You want to, just make sure it's soft and browned up. I've got my oven heated to 350. I have my husband as my sous chef. He is going to help me because these are kind of hard. Be very careful when you're cutting these and peel it first. It'll make it not quite as thick. But I'll just give you a quick video of him preparing that one. Butternut squash cut in cubes, and I've put it in the middle of the pan, the roasting pan, because it's going to get done quicker than the 2 halves I have. So just keep that in mind. Check this in about 10-15 minutes. Butternut squash actually has a high sugar content, which causes it to burn easier. So I'm probably going to check this in 10, maybe 12 minutes, flip it, cook the middle. And then once these are done, I'll probably flip the big ones, but they're going to go on for another half hour. This is probably only going to cook for about 20 minutes, 20-25 minutes, the chopped. And then the bigger ones are going to go for 40-45 minutes. I'm going to do a little different take on it. Usually it has some kind of a pasta sauce. I'm just going to use tomatoes and tomato paste. It is going to have 2 kinds of cheeses. I have 1 bag of mozzarella and I have a brick of feta. This is butternut squash lasagna, and I'm also adding chicken to it and black beans for protein. You could turn this into a completely vegetarian dish. Just omit the chicken, and it's going to be hearty enough if you wanted to. You could also, I thought about putting in some kind of like lean Italian chicken sausage, but mine's frozen solid and I didn't want to take it out of the freezer. Get your butternut squash roasted off, and that's what I did. I've got about 2 cups. You just want them really soft, slightly browned, not too dark. And if you don't have any chicken chopped up in your freezer, one thing that I wanted to mention about that, you could take about 4 chicken breasts, and while you're roasting your butternut squash, you could just put a little salt and pepper, maybe Italian seasoning on the chicken, and roast it at the same time. So that is your second step. You want to make sure you've got the roasted butternut squash, roasted chicken. You could do them both at the same time. And then the last part you'll need to prepare ahead of time is your lasagna noodles. I did this yesterday because I wanted them cooled. You just prepare it according to the package, put it in one of those big pots. Al dente is great, where it's just slightly, it's soft, but it's not real mushy. I hope they don't stick together, but I did it yesterday. Just like a traditional lasagna, you're going to have your kind of cheesy white mixture. That's going to consist of the feta, egg, and I'm putting parsley and basil, fresh parsley and basil. So that's going to be one layer of this. The other layer is going to be your chicken and your vegetables, your beans, onions, tomatoes. So think of it kind of like your normally your ground beef hamburger pasta sauce mixture. I have preheated the oven to 375. I want to try to get at least 12 servings in here. So you want to make sure that you spray with non-stick spray. And this cheese does not go in any of the mixtures. It's just going to be on one of the layers. And I'm just using a 6 ounce. You could use a little more. I'm trying to keep it a little lighter. And remember, try to use tomatoes that are non-GMO. I'm using a 28 ounce can of crushed tomatoes, and this one, I couldn't believe it. I found one that was made in Italy. They taste amazing. They're non-GMO, organic. So I'm going to use this whole can. And I'm also going to use some tomato paste. I'm going to go ahead and add about 2 cups of diced onion. Could be red, could be white. About 2 cups of mushrooms. I've diced them up. And I rinse my mushrooms. I don't use soap on them, but I do rinse them. 2 cups of the diced, just roasted chicken. So I'm going to put these in after I stir. The butternut squash can get mushy. Black beans can kind of break up. So I'm going to put some Italian seasoning in here. A lot, like 2 tablespoons. I'm going to put a lot of red pepper flake. I like it spicy. About 1.5 tablespoons. Also going to put some garlic. That's going to be the equivalent to 3 garlic cloves, 3 large garlic cloves. And we want to go ahead and get this all stirred up. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add the butternut squash and the black beans. That's about 2 cups of black beans. Oh, and by the way, for the lasagna, I'm just using a whole grain Barilla lasagna. And it does have fiber in it, and it is non-GMO. So those are just some things to look for. So now what I'm going to do is make the lighter sauce filling. Now traditionally this is made with ricotta. You could use like a non-fat ricotta. And I'm going to use about 1.5 cups of egg whites. If you don't want to use egg whites, want to use regular eggs, I would use about 6 because this is big. You could cut this in half. So that's about 1.5 cups of egg white. And then I have about 1.5 cups of feta. And I'm just going to kind of break it up. Probably just use my hands. Give this a stir. The butternut chicken black bean lasagna is done. It cooked for about a total of an hour, even with this big container. And you want to make sure, one thing that I had to do, I had to push some of the lasagna noodles that were too close to the surface. I had to kind of push them down or they'll be too crunchy. And I added the cheese the last 10 minutes and it turned out great. So if you want to take a look, and this is probably going to be, I'm going to try to get maybe 12, maybe 15 servings. So let me get into this and show you what it looks like. Layers and layers of goodness. And you see how thick each piece is going to be, so this will feed an army. If you can, you want to sprinkle a little fresh basil on there. And if you want it a little spicier, add a little more red pepper flake. So I cannot wait to dig into this. This is our dinner. And then up next, I will show you the butternut squash cake with the cream cheese frosting. Stay tuned. Okay, so the butternut squash is roasted. That's just one medium-sized butternut squash. It roasted for about 45 minutes. I flipped it once. And by the way, this is we're making a frosted butternut squash cake. It's going to have a cream cheese icing. Now I am using pecans in the cake and the frosting. If you're allergic to nuts or don't like pecans, you can omit that or change it up. Walnuts would be good, even almonds might taste good with this. I'm using, I think this is a 13 by 9. You could use two 9-inch pie, you make it a layered cake. You could do cupcakes. I think this time I just wanted to do like a sheet pan cake. And I've already sprayed it. The oven is preheated to 375. I've never used this before, but I found this just in my regular grocery store. Kind of walk through your baking aisle and see what kind of whole grains. I mean, they have oat flour, almond flour, anything you can think of. So I figured with baking with pumpkins or squash, cinnamon, I thought this might be good. It's a dark rye flour. It has lots of fiber in it, has some protein, potassium. So I'm going to give that a try. I thought it might go quite well with this butternut squash cake. This is also something you could omit. It also has a little bit of orange. So in the cake part itself, I'm going to use orange zest. And in the icing, the cream cheese frosting, I'm going to use the juice. I'm using Truvia. I'm not affiliated with them, but I definitely like Truvia. Anything that's flavored with monk fruit is, I think, a little better for you than just full sugary white refined sugar. Same thing with my powdered sugar that's going to be used in the icing. I am using Swerve, but you could use regular powdered sugar, you could use regular sugar. So if you do use Truvia, it's half the amount of sugar that you would use. So this recipe calls for 1.5 cups of regular sugar. So I'm just going to use 3/4 of a cup of Truvia. 2.5 cups of flour. Okay, 1/2 tablespoon of baking soda. 1/2 tablespoon of baking powder. Okay, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. 1 teaspoon of ginger, powdered ginger. You could use regular ginger. Just chop up about an inch knob. About 1 tablespoon of vanilla, good quality vanilla. Sea salt. For the liquid ingredients, I'm actually using buttermilk, and I found a low-fat organic buttermilk. We're going to use about 3/4 of a cup of that. And then you would want to use 2 large eggs, 3 small eggs, or I am using regular egg whites, about 1/2 of a cup. And now we're going to put in the butternut squash. You want to just use a spoon, just kind of take it out of the and just kind of smash up the squash. Okay, and I'm also going to put the zest of 1 orange. And I also have 1 cup of pecans. Again, this is optional. I am going to use just half in the cake, and then half is going for the icing. I can tell you this, the aroma of this cake is quite intoxicating. You really smell the zest from the orange, the cinnamon, nutmeg, the vanilla. So far I'm liking the way it smells, and I pinched a little taste of it, even though it's got, you know, uncooked ingredients. I think it's going to be a great cake. Okay, this is going in 375. I'm going to check it in about 20 minutes. Meantime, I'm going to go ahead and make the icing. Now, you want to go ahead and set your cream cheese, that's 1 block, 8 ounce. Set it out for at least a half hour or so, long enough while you're making the cake. You want it to be kind of soft. And I am using a 1/3 less fat. And then the juice from 1 orange. About half tablespoon of vanilla. And again, you can use regular powdered sugar. I am using Swerve. And this looks like it's equal parts, whatever you would use with sugar. The recipe calls for 4 cups. That seems like a lot. So I've got 150 grams. Let's see if that's good enough. So now that the icing is done, I'm going to go ahead and chill that in the fridge and wait for the cake to be done. Now, you want to completely let your cake cool, if you can, for like a half hour or more. You could even throw it in the fridge, throw it in the freezer. And before you put it in the fridge, I forgot, we're going to put nuts in this. So the other half a cup of pecans, go ahead and put that in there, stir it up, put it in the refrigerator. The butternut squash cake really turned out nicely. It smells really fragrant. I tried it too, and it's almost like a gingerbread cake. I think that flour that I used really helped. So now it's cooled, and I'm going to go ahead and put some icing on it. I don't know if I'm going to need all the icing. I'm going to start off with maybe half of it. It seems like a lot of icing. So you could cut that recipe in half, and I think you'd be okay. And then I'm probably going to keep this in the fridge and then just cut it up as I go along. Yeah, half of the icing is plenty. You can see where we've, you know, little mice have taken chunks of the edge of it out. AKA me and my husband. We had to make sure it wasn't a nasty recipe. That's the fun of cooking. Trying out new things. Butternut squash cake. Give it a try. Don't be afraid to experiment with squash, zucchini, acorn squash, spaghetti squash, butternut squash. Try it in a lot of different recipes. It's really healthy, it's good for you, and they really taste good. So I hope you've enjoyed the part 2 of the squash series. I'm thinking about doing a pumpkin series. Let me know down below if you'd like to see some new pumpkin recipes. But I hope you're enjoying your fall. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself and each other. Bye.